Hello, how's everybody doing tonight? Hope everybody's having a good night out there. We've had some pretty interesting several days or last week, really. But before we get started, pretty soon I'll have another code. If anybody is interested in the My Patriot Food Supply, I'll have another code for another savings on that. I'll be putting that out in a couple of days. And I also had a company called Noble Metals. They want me to produce a few commercials for them, and I'm going to be producing those commercials and putting those also on the channel here. And they'll have a discount code for anybody that's looking to buy some precious metals. You can get some pretty good deals there. I have more information coming up on that a little bit later on, though. All right, I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you've had a good week. Hasn't been too bad here. Been cold, a lot of snow on the ground. Looks like we're going to get some more this week, but I guess that's okay. I wanted to talk about a few different things tonight, touch on a few topics, and then look at some of the newer executive orders that were put out, and it's an astounding number total that have been put out, including the proclamations. So we're going to look at all that. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was the economy. And because I feel like this is our most pressing and our most serious concern for the short term, especially for those who don't have a ton of money like myself. You know, the economy takes a downturn, and, you know, I'm going to be hit pretty hard, just like most people out there are. And that's why preparing for this is probably, you know, this is probably the most concerning immediate event that I believe is going to happen. With some of the news that we've seen coming out, there's a lot more going on that we could expect to happen over the course of this year, and we're going to touch on a lot of that. But with the closure, just looking at the closure of the Keystone pipeline, I know that's old news. It happened last week. But the thing is, you know, that's 11,000 people. And that doesn't sound like that much. But as you start really looking at this, you know, this pipeline was going through areas that there really wasn't much there. So as it started going up and as they started developing the pipeline, then other businesses started, you know, popping up to support that pipeline and to support the people that worked on the pipeline, restaurants, you know, gas stations, convenience stores, things like that. And now with this closing down, a lot of these other businesses are being affected by this too. And I've seen a lot of reports of that all across that general area through the nation that people are talking about. It's not just affecting those who got laid off that day. It's affecting those who had businesses that supplied those people or supported those people or those companies in some way. And this is going to have a huge trickle down effect, especially with one of the other executive orders that got signed this past week too. And that's the one that bans the fracking or the ban, you know, any type of drilling for oil or natural gas on any government land from here on out. And that's a pretty big hit. That's something that we're not going to see that effect today or tomorrow, like people from the Keystone pipeline who lost their jobs. They saw that effect right then, that day. This effect is going to trickle down because all of these contracts, all of these companies that are currently on government land and have the mineral rights to do what they're doing there, as soon as these rights start to run out, they're not going to be renewed. So we're going to start seeing our oil supply, our natural gas supply begin to drop off bit by bit by bit over this year coming up. Hey, Mike from South Carolina, I hear you. Yeah, I agree. It is on purpose. I mean, there's so much going on right now, and it's really becoming obvious with some of the other things we've seen. You know that 317,000. That's an unbelievable number. 317,000 small businesses have closed down since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. How many large companies have closed down? How many billion dollar companies have closed down? There's not been a single one. They've profited. Somehow they've managed to profit off of all this, while your average person is the one that gets hit. The middle class is the one that's taking the hit harder than anybody else on this, because people that were not in the middle class, who weren't in poverty level, they actually were getting more money than what they were making when they were working with the unemployment, you know, boost that happened, you know, throughout the duration of last year. The rich were getting richer, because it's not that hard to retool a factory to start producing masks instead of shirts or whatever. That's not that hard to do. Hanes is doing it right now. They're one of their biggest sellers right now is masks. And we know that Hanes is big on underwear and t-shirts and things like that, but they just repurposed their patterns basically and started producing masks. So now they're making a killing off of it. Everybody's making a killing off of it. And now what we're going to see with the closure of that pipeline and the restrictions on no new permits to drill or to obtain natural gas, from any government lands, we're going to start to see the price of gas go through the roof. And as the price of gas starts to go through the roof, then that's gonna force everything else through the roof. We already got a lot of people, more people on unemployment right now than in a very, very long time. We've already got more people out of work now than have been in decades. And we're just going to start to see an increase in that. There's no plan. We sit here and we listen to these politicians talk about COVID relief. Well, give me some COVID relief and let me go do my job and let these other people go do their job. That's COVID relief. Let us go work and make a living, not telling us to stay home. I mean, even if you get a vaccine, you still got to wear the mask and you still got to, stay home and you still got to stay away from other people. I mean, nothing they say makes sense. Everything is contradictory. And then they wonder why we doubt them. They wonder why we doubt them like that. And speaking of contradictory, what about AOC the other day? How many of y'all saw the video that I wasn't aware of because I don't follow her on Twitter, but I saw it later on. But she put out this video how she was in fear of her life during the Capitol riots, how people were banging on her door and trying to force their way in. And she had to hide in the bathroom in her office. And she could hear people running around out there saying, "Where's she at? Let's get her," and things like that. And then as it turns out, she wasn't even in the Capitol building. Reports come out, she wasn't even in the Capitol building. So that's just pretty much a blatant lie that, she was putting out there. Now, I think a lot of people really don't like this woman anyway. And that just added a little fuel to the fire right there. I mean, she's one of the ones that you really have to worry about because her type of rhetoric, I mean, that blatant lies like that, then how can you trust anything else that comes out of her mouth, which I think most people don't anyway. But the thing is, it's so obvious. It's so obvious now that it's almost unbelievable. Yeah, censorship. They really are stepping up the censorship. And, a lot of people who don't think that the type of censorship that we're seeing is severe or, should be concerning to everyone. It doesn't matter what side you're on, left, right, middle, far left, far right. It doesn't matter what side you're on. The fact that the government is now basically allowing these larger social media companies to dictate what's okay to put out and what's not. That's not freedom of speech. I hate to say this, but freedom of speech is someone being able to say anything they want to say, unless they're outright threatening to harm somebody, but their opinion in any shape or form. But now we don't have free speech. You can't speak your opinion. You can't even speak half of your opinion anymore. I mean, we see this on these social media platforms. We see it on other platforms worldwide. We see it through censorship, through fact checks. And, it's getting ridiculous that one side is completely restricting the other side's ability to communicate at this point. We can barely express our own ideas anymore without getting taken off the internet. What's up, brother? Prep trucking. You never underestimate the power of stupid people in large groups. There's about 100 of them up there in Congress right now, and then however many's in the House. A lot of them. A lot. How do I think they will do the Great Reset and be cashless society? I think we're seeing that being ushered in right now. And that's because, like, for example, up here in Michigan, where I'm at right now, and the town right over beside me, a town called Novi, the post office there, because I sell some things online sometimes, I'll go to the post office there. They do not accept cash anymore. And there's other places that are doing that don't accept cash. I expect with everything we're hearing about the coronavirus and all these mutations and, even though they come out and gave contradictory information about their own reports last year, talking about how a lot of the positives from last year were not really positives and things, and how it's amazing that we had less than 200 flu cases all through the last half of last year and nationwide. But we had hundreds of thousands of coronavirus cases, and they're going to use the coronavirus to basically wipe out cash. And that's one of the reasons I personally like gold and silver better than cash, because in that type of situation, if they make a transition to a cashless society, your precious metals, your precious stones, your valuables, your collectibles, old collectible coins, gold coins, things like that will still hold value. But that dollar bill or that $100 bill is going to be worthless. I mean, toilet paper will be more valuable than what that is. And I believe we're seeing that ushered in right now. They tried to attach to that first stimulus bill that went through last year. When we got that first stimulus check for those that got it, they tried to attach the not the real ID, but what they call the digital wallet along with that. And what the digital wallet does is basically requires you to have your, US debit card. And the digital wallet is going to be what maintains all of our currency before long. So check out the digital wallet. You might want to research that a little bit, but that's what they're going to be moving towards. And it wouldn't surprise me to see something like that pushed in the agenda of this next stimulus package that's being pushed so hard. And, I'm all for getting a little extra money. Well, no money's extra. All money, we need it. Excuse me. But they're on TV every day talking about how we're going to help the American people with this $1,400. Well, $1,400. Yeah, that I would like to have that in my hand right now. But, that really just pays a couple of my bills. I mean, how many of y'all out there does $1,400 change your life? $1,400 is just $1,400. That's not a big favor that they're doing us. That's our money that we should be getting back because the government's not providing the services that we pay them to provide with our tax money. And one of those services are reliable school systems. And as much as I complain about sitting at home, as much as I complain about, people want me to wear a mask and things like that, I'm not really suffering compared to my kids. My kids are growing up, and your kids are growing up in a world that, we only saw on TV. We only imagined on TV. The world will never be that bad. This is America. We'll always pull through. No, we're at a turning point right now. And if we're not careful, we're going to take a wrong turn, and there's no coming back. It's going to be a one-way street. What's up? Save yourself. HR 127. Yeah. HR 127. I'll tell you something interesting. I think I had something written down sort of on those lines. Yeah. Let's talk about gun control. Gun control. HR 127 is at the heart of it. But I'll tell you somebody you got to watch out for. Let me pull this up right here. And her name is Sheila Jackson Lee, a Democrat. And she has sponsored almost 75%. Get my page back. She has sponsored 75% of the last bill of the bills that have been on gun control that have been proposed since January 4th. So this woman, and this is why we got to watch out because HR 127 is a big sweeping bill. The chances of a huge sweeping bill passing right this moment may not be that good. And at least I hope they're not. I hope it wouldn't pass, because that bill is going to require everything from raising the minimum age to buy a firearm to 21 to not only do you have to do a background check. If I'm going to give my son my rifle, he's going to have to go do a background check. But if he fails that background check, then it has to be reported to the local law enforcement. Why would they have to know that? All right. So, but that's part of that bill too. And there's a lot of other things in that bill. A lot of things like, I think that one also includes the high capacity magazines. It also redefines the pistol brace. There's a lot of things in that bill that they're attaching to it that if it goes through with one bill, we've almost lost our gun rights at that point, with the exception of those that can afford to keep them. Because part of what that bill also does is require anybody, before they can own a firearm, to take a firearm safety course, a written course, classroom lecture type of written course. And then, of course, firearms training with the weapon itself. So that's going to be more expense on anyone. I'm going to have to, if they were to pass this, then that means I would have to go out and I would have to pay to take this course. And they would most likely keep my firearms until I took this course and then pay a registration fee to get my firearms back. So this is going to be bad. But I'll tell you what is almost more scary. It's along the same lines, but it's the bill that the senator I was just speaking about. Senator, let me make sure I get her name right. I don't want to say it wrong. Sheila Jackson Lee. She's, I guess she's going about it in a little smarter way. She's proposing bills, one right after the other, on gun control, but each bill is just focusing on one little thing. Because I think Congress knows they're going to have a hard time getting the American public, or at least the majority of the American public, to accept the fact that they're going to take our guns. If they just came out one day and come on TV tomorrow and said, we're taking your guns, then there very well might be an uprising at that point. Who knows, but there might be. And they know that. So what better way to do it than to begin by raising taxes on ammunition, which is one of her bills, and requiring background check nationwide on ammunition. Not just background check, registration of your ammunition. If I go buy a box of bullets right up here at the gun store down the road, then I've got to go to the police department and register the fact that I just bought 50 bullets. Well, I mean, and it's things like that. I mean, it's also, she's got a single bill out there that also includes magazines, or talks simply about magazines with a more than 10 round capacity. And I think that that's the way that they're going to enact gun control, at least in the beginning, is they're going to make it very expensive. And by making it expensive, they're simply just going to raise the taxes. They're going to charge all of these extra fees to own a gun. They're going to make us go register all of our guns. So the ones that can afford to do that are going to do it. Then they're going to weed out the other ones, because other people, y'all know as well as I do, when they say turn in their guns, everybody out there says, I'll die. They can get it from my cold, dead hands. BS. Half the people out there are going to take their guns to the police department and they're going to turn them in, especially if it's a buyback program. A lot of people are going to do that. They say they won't, but when it comes down to it, they will. And that's just a fact of life. They're going to do whatever helps them at that moment in time. And that's where we need to, really stand together, no matter what your beliefs may be, no matter whether you're, red leaning, blue leaning, it doesn't matter, because we're all Americans and we all should be able to work together for, a common goal. And that common goal is just freedom and everybody having a chance to have a good life here in the U.S. It's not about controlling one part of the population. But now that's what we're starting to see with this government, is it's about control. And they're really pushing hard. I've never seen a new administration come in all my years. Never seen one come in pushing as hard as this administration is pushing. And they are pushing. I mean, it's crazy. You guys, y'all know what I'm talking about. All right. There is something else too I want to talk about. And this should bother everybody. This should really make us stop what we're doing, stand back, and just really think about this for a minute. The military was ordered to stand down to begin preparation for combating local or, homeland extremism. And I'm going to read this article here, or read a little bit of it. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin issued a military-wide stand-down order for the armed forces to have needed discussions about extremism in the ranks. The order involves a staggering pause of operations across every branch of the military over the next 60 days. And at least that's what Pentagon spokesman John Kirby announced. But they're going to pause operations for 60 days for every branch, except for the National Guard that are guarding the Capitol in Washington. Those troops ain't going nowhere, y'all. Those troops they're where they're at. They'll rotate them out. They'll do that. But we're going to have troops in place up there for a very long time. And just mark my words on that. That's going to happen. I don't see them troops going anywhere. But think about what they just said. I'm going to put a link to that article right here for anybody that wants to read it a little more in depth. Oh, man. It's not going to let me put the link. I don't know if that link's going to work or not. Let's try it. If it doesn't, I'll put it in the description later. It said it was too long to put in there. It said it was too long. Yeah, I agree with you. Save yourself. That's like mine. You know, when they talk about a mandatory buyback, what a lot of people don't realize on the mandatory buyback, they're not gonna look at my gun and they're gonna say, man, you put a lot of time and effort into this. You know, you really built this one up nice. We're gonna give you, you know, $4,000. No, they're gonna look at the base model or whatever type of weapon that is and give you the absolute used price for it. Because as a gun dealer, you have, you know, if you bought and sold cars before, you know about Kelly Blue Book and all, well, you have the same books for gun values that tell you how much a particular gun is worth, if it is 100% or perfect, or 90% or 70 or 50%, you know, scuffed up a little bit. And I believe that's what they're going to go on. I don't believe that they're going to offer you any type of compensation for any components that are on that gun, the time, the quality of that particular firearm. A lot of people in a buyback situation, they wouldn't even get enough money to pay for the lower receiver and lower parts that they got in it. And that's crazy. What's up, Christopher? That's true. If people won't defend the mask mandates or defy the mask mandate, then most won't defy a buyback either. And, you know, that's my biggest fear, is because I think that once we lose the guns, or at least the majority of the population loses the guns, it's done. At that point, we are totally controlled. And some people, you know, that may not even bother them one bit. But for me, it does. I've lived free for too long, and I want my children to grow up free. My grandkids and all that, I want them to grow up free. I don't want them to live in, you know, any type of totalitarian society. Yeah, it'll be a flat rate. Yeah, and I expect when they do offer because they did that in North Carolina, state right up above mine, South Carolina for me, you know, but about 3 or 4 years ago, they had a program. You may have to look it up on the internet. I don't have the exact specifics, but I remember when it happened. I remember what happened. And it was around the Charlotte area in North Carolina. And the police there offered a buyback. Bring your gun up here. We'll give you a book value for it, you know, just to get it off the streets. And people did. There were thousands upon thousands of guns that were brought up there. I mean, they spent millions of dollars in like a 72-hour period buying guns back from people just at, you know, I guess book value for that particular gun. So for those that think your neighbor or whoever, you know, that stands out there and says, I'll never give up my gun, you know, a lot of them will. A lot of them will. And it seems like the people that talk the loudest are the ones that, you know, do it first sometimes. I mean, that's going to be a big concern, because once they do that, once they do the buyback and they get the voluntary people to give up their guns next, then that's when they're really going to start pushing the gun control agenda. And that's when they're really going to start making these weapons illegal, or these firearms. I don't want to call them weapons, because they're only a weapon if someone's attacking you. A hammer is a weapon if someone's attacking me. So is a screwdriver. So is anything, a rock I can pick up. Those are weapons if someone's attacking me. But a firearm, you know, it's only a matter of time after the buybacks that they're going to start offering rewards. You know, does your neighbor have any guns they're hiding? Just like they're going to do with this COVID and not wearing masks and stuff, you know. And people are going to turn you in. People are going to turn you in. We already see a nation divided. And the worst part about this is we don't see anything being done to bring us back together. And really, you know, the government can't do anything. The government is the reason that we are divided right now. All right, so getting back on the military standing down to combat extremism. I'm going to go back to this page real quick right here. And not going to stay here too awful long, but I want to read something. Okay. Austin reportedly ordered the stand down after a discussion with U.S. military branch leaders concerned about the fact that current and former military service members took part in the Capitol riot on January 6th. The Pentagon had ordered a review of domestic extremism with the ranks before the Capitol riot, but Austin at this point has insisted on further action. White supremacist groups have put a premium on recruiting current and former military members. The issue of extremists, both white supremacists and anti-government extremists like the militia movement in the military, is certainly a real problem and a perennial one. Key word right there, perennial. For that reason, it needs to be addressed because the past few decades have illustrated that it will not go away on its own. You know, yeah, there's racism in the world. Is there? Of course there is. Just like there's sexism, just like there's every other type of prejudice. You got people that don't like you because you got money. You got people that don't like you because you're poor. You got people that don't like you because you do this job or you look this way or you say this thing. And, you know, that just is life. But they're making this sound like, I really hate the rhetoric that was used in that by that admiral. What's his name again? Or the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, talking about, you know, white extremism, white supremacists being in the ranks of the military. Are there any? I'm sure there are, but I'm pretty sure there's supremacists or whatever they want to call themselves from every other race out there in the military also. All right. And being single, this is singling out. This is aimed directly at conservatives. All right. They want to make it a race issue, and it's not a race issue. Three percenter. What kind of survivor am I? The one that thinks the government will pay you to confiscate your guns? What the fuck is wrong with you, man? There ain't nothing wrong with me, buddy. And I'll tell you why. Because obviously you didn't listen to the entire conversation and you want to just pop your mouth off like that. I was talking about the government is offering a mandatory buyback and how people are going to turn their guns in. All right. So watch it, you know, listen a little closer before you pop that mouth off like that. Yeah, Trapper Bob. I believe the government shut the ammo off. I know it's getting increasingly difficult to find ammo anywhere out there. And when you do find it, it's, you know, $40 and $50 for a box, you know, a box of 50. And it's getting out of control as far as that goes. Even reloading components. I've been reloading for a couple of decades, but these days reloading, you know, I can't even find the components. I can't find the primers. And when I do, they're more expensive than the bullets. So even reloading has gotten a lot more difficult. So QCat, you got ammo and components. You're able to find those in Canada. I'd heard somebody else had told me that too. And it makes me wonder what the difference is because, you know, everybody, you know, my reloading didn't increase, you know, in the last year. My purchases of ammunition didn't increase. I know there's a lot more people out there just buying it, but these companies can generally meet demands like that when they want to, you know, when they're able to. So there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes when it comes to that. And, you know, it's something that I guess in the end we'll probably find out about. Lincoln Parker, do I think people will give in on guns? Here's the thing. I think that some people will. I mean, that's just, you know, that's just going to happen. Some people are going to give up on guns. I mean, are going to give in on that situation. They're going to turn their guns in. They're going to do what's told, and other people will not. When it comes time that they come for the guns, when they truly come for the guns, then I do believe that will be the time that if we see a civil war, that's the time that it's going to happen in. Michael, yeah, Australia did. They passed that. That's been a long time. That's been a while back, hasn't it? Captain Kirk taught you how to make gunpowder. That's good. That is good. And that's true. You can't fight a predator drone. Yeah. And that's something too, is, and this is something that really is its own whole subject, and that's surveillance, surveillance. And this is the problem we face as citizens when we have a government that's attempting to be as oppressive as they're attempting to be right now. Imagine 6 months from now. Biden's already signed 40-something executive orders. I'm fixing to give you the exact number here in just a minute. But 40-something executive orders, more than any president during this time frame in history. And imagine what it's going to look like 6 months from now. Imagine how many more executive orders he's going to pass in 6 months. And an executive order is a powerful thing. An executive order can take any existing law and manifest that or change that into what the president desires it to be. It would take an act of Congress to stop that executive order, but there will be no acts of Congress now. We're seeing that with some of these executive orders, what they're doing is padding their own party. And they're doing that by, basically saying we're not going to incarcerate any more illegal immigrants that come across the border, things like that. Catch and release is coming back into effect. No more holding Mexico or keeping Mexico is in effect. Now they're going to bring them across here. And, I've always been for everybody making a good living. I always wish everybody could, but, you got to do things the legal way. If I don't pay my taxes, I go to jail. So you shouldn't be able to cross the borders to my country illegally and walk free and make money. Sorry, but that just is the way it is. And that's a really good point. Did that one already go? Yankee Watchdog. That's a very good point. That's a very good point. We can't fight the military? ? Russia got their ass handed to them by the Afghans. And you know what? That is true. The military, this is what I see happening right now. With the stand down order that puts a pause on 60-day pause on military operations. Now, what that means, I'm sure most of us really will never even know exactly what that paused and what that didn't. But, and this ties into what you're saying right there, Red 92. The military will turn on them if they go to shit on the people. I agree with you. There's a lot of people in the military that right now would say, hold up, we're not doing this. I'm not going to this small town and I'm not incarcerating these people for doing nothing. I'm not shooting American citizens. That's why we have this military stand down for 60 days. So they can go through the ranks and combat homeland extremism, domestic terrorism, as they're calling it. Conservative values are now considered domestic terrorism. I mean, the writing's on the wall. Excuse me, y'all. I'm sorry. I apologize. The writing's on the wall. It truly is right now. The writing's on the wall. And for those that can't read it, please, stop and pay attention because it's right here in front of us. They're telling us what they're doing. There's 110 bills in front of Congress right now that relate with gun control. Executive orders will be all the president needs to open these borders. One of the executive orders that he just passed or just signed did away with private prisons. And, that's a debatable subject. I didn't really think a whole lot about private prisons, before I read that executive order. And I said, well, why is this such a big deal? Why would he do this? And I started looking at it, and approximately 10 to 12%, depending on who you read, 10 to 12% of the prison population in the United States is housed in private institutions, private prisons, a private company. 54% of immigration and illegal immigration issues are housed in private prisons. So that means over half of the people who are in prison for being here illegally or committing a crime here illegally or things to that effect are immediately, I don't want to say released. I don't know what they're going to do with everybody, but these facilities are going to close down. And where does that 54% of the population go? Probably sanctuary city type of deal. So they're padding their numbers with this, and they're expecting all these people that they just say, come on into the country, that they're just going to vote blue next time. And the bad news about it is they probably will. They probably will. Yeah, we can expect a lot more false flags coming up in the next few weeks, days, because with the military now focusing on this is what's going to happen with the military. I guarantee you they're going to find a lot of people in the military that they're going to run their name through the mud and say these people are right-wing extremists. They're white supremacists. They're want to destroy America. And most of that is going to be unfounded. Because as we see with the media and with the world, we don't have to have proof, not when it comes to the average person. If I come out here on YouTube and I said my neighbor over there, and I'm not saying this, but if I said my neighbor was committing a horrible crime, maybe they were hurting kids or something, then it doesn't matter if that neighbor gets proved innocent or not. Every time anybody sees him from here on out, that's the first thing they're going to think. And that's what they're doing with this. And that's what we see with people that were in the Trump administration, is all these people, are being blacklisted now. Their names are being run through the mud, making it almost impossible for them to get a job. So not only are we being discriminated against, but we truly are being oppressed at this point. We truly are being pushed back into a corner to where some people are not even going to be able to make a living to support their family. Yeah. Yeah, Richard Jewell. That's a good point. Yeah, the whole situation is getting crazy now. All right, we see the military that Secretary of Defense come out and gave that statement. Military is going to stand down because we're going to evaluate our ranks and we're going to get rid of all this extremism and domestic terrorism. Well, what they're going to do is put things in place that basically prevent certain people from ever entering the military again, which basically is going to mean probably like my children, which I don't want I don't want them to go in right now. To be honest with you, I served and I did my time through 2 wars, and I don't want to, and I got total respect for everybody that's in there. But at this point in time, I want my kids here with me instead of in the military, so that we can all be together, because shit's probably going down this year. And what they're going to do is they're going to start dictating who can go into the military and who cannot. And this is going to eliminate anyone that's been, lean towards the right, anyone that has family members or parents who are Republicans. And this is going to change our military completely and drastically. And we already see that with another executive order that was passed this week. But on the flip side of that, all right, we got one general telling us we're going to pause all operations. And then we got another general telling us this. And this is Admiral Charles Richard warns that Moscow and Beijing have begun to aggressively challenge international norms in ways not seen since the height of the Cold War. There is a real possibility that a regional crisis with Russia or China could escalate quickly to a conflict involving nuclear weapons. If they perceived a conventional loss would threaten the regime or state, so basically if they thought that we could somehow beat them or hold them off, then they're going to resort to nuclear weapons. And I will post this article because it's not as long as the other one, at least the title of it, for those that want to read it. And I think this is a very important article also. I think it's a very important article. And the reason is because it's showing 2 sides of the same coin, the military. One side, the military is saying, the Secretary of Defense is saying, we got to stand down because we got to combat domestic terrorism in our ranks when there's been no domestic terrorism. I'm sorry, what happened at the Capitol was terrible. Anytime somebody loses their life, it's terrible. I'm not making light of that. But this was not what they're portraying it to be. Yes, there were some people there that instigated it. There were some people with an agenda. There was even the one dude or people that left the pipe bombs. I understand that. Yes, that is. But for the rest of the people that were there, it was not terrorism. For 99% of the people that were there, they were not terrorists. They were not there to cause trouble. They were there because they wanted to protest and have their voices heard and let their government know where they stood. But apparently, we can't do that anymore. Wait until there's another protest. Wait until there's another Trump protest. I mean, there are still riots going on in major cities across the U.S. with Antifa, and that's okay. That's okay. There's no National Guard there. There's no big congressional hearing saying, "Whoa, they took over a police station. They're burning down these buildings. We need to stop it." There's nothing being said. But as soon as there's another Republican rally, you're going to see that this being labeled as another terrorist gathering or something to that effect. All right. And so that's something that when we talk about an EMP, I just put out a video on EMP this past week, and most people probably watched it. And, I put a lot of time in that video, and I wanted to touch on one thing in there was something I think it was DB brought it up. If I'm wrong, correct me there. But asking about fiber optic communications and fiber optic lines, during the EMP. Fiber optics, since they work, because fiber optic is basically a crystal clear optical cable, flexible cable, that's light pulses are transmitted through. So those would survive it. Now, the control mechanisms that actually pulse the light would not. And there was another question asking about, would inline fuses or breakers work for an EMP? And in theory, no. And the reason is because it takes X amount of time for when you got a fuse and you got the filament in the fuse, the rise in current and voltage causes that fuse to blow and opens that circuit. The problem with the EMP is that normally when you got a rise, you got flat and then it'll rise and top out. The problem with the EMP is the rise when it goes from 0 volts or whatever the standard voltage is on that circuit, that flat, the rise is almost instantaneous. So it's rising from 0 volts to 1,000,000 volts in 90% of the speed of light. And the thing is, the filament cannot burn out fast enough, nor can a breaker box flip that switch quick enough. So a lot of the surge is going to get through your standard breakers or your standard fuses. There are some on the market. Now, I cannot vouch for any of these, but there are some on the market, EMP safe or something like that, devices they say you can hook up. But overall, your standard surge protector you got plugged into your wall, things like that, they're not going to work for EMP. The pulse rises too fast. So it goes from 0 to 1,000,000, almost instantaneously, faster than a physical device can actually break open or burn out. Yeah, EMP shield. That's what it's called, QCAP. All right. Well, I'm going to read off a couple of these or the new executive orders and talk briefly about these real quick that Biden signed since the last time I talked about executive orders, which had been about a week and a half ago, I believe, something like that. So let's see here. Okay. So since Biden has been in office, and this was up to 8 o'clock this morning. So more might have been done between 8 a.m. Eastern time this morning and now. That's definitely possible. But a total of 28 executive orders, 4 proclamations plus 1 ceremonial proclamation, 10 presidential memorandums, and 2 letters, or what he have signed in the Oval Office that have impacted us. So that's a total of 43, I don't want to say 43 executive orders, but 43 actions enacted by the president from the Oval Office, plus 2 letters that rejoined the World Health Organization and the Paris Climate Agreement. Now, there's 3 types of, there's more than 3, but when we start talking about executive orders and things, we really break these down in 3 different categories. The executive order itself is directed to and governs action by government officials and agencies. They have the force of law. So they are, an executive order is a law. And these are required by law to be published in the Federal Register and in Title III of the Code of Federal Regulations. So the executive order is the most powerful of the three that we're going to talk about: the executive order, the proclamation, and the memorandum. An executive order can take an existing law and modify that law. Now, the modification of that law, there's no constitutional requirements that say how that law has to be modified. And what I mean basically is a president can take an executive order and take an existing law and modify it how they want. Now, if they go too extreme with that modification, then of course Congress could step in and remove that presidential authority from that executive order. But at this point in time, we're not going to see that happen. So these are the most powerful of the three executive orders. And the reason why are the next down is memorandum. And memorandum are not required by law to be printed in the Federal Register. They are not required to cite the president's legal authority, the same as with an executive order. And the Office of Management and Budget is not required to issue a budgetary impact statement on executive memoranda. All right, so the difference between a memorandum or memoranda, executive memoranda, and executive order is very small. It's a very small difference. This is the main difference. Two main differences. An executive order has to be put in the Federal Register. So once the president passes an executive order, that goes into the Federal Register, which makes it public knowledge at that point. All right. Within a memorandum, this does not have to be put in the Federal Register, which means they can sign multiple executive memoranda in one day and never even report it to the public. And this does not have to be, like I said, put in the Federal Register or put in the budgetary impact statement. So the difference between these two, the main difference is a memorandum can modify an existing law. If I have a law on the books, a memorandum can modify and make changes to that law, just like an executive order. The difference is a memorandum cannot change an executive order. But if I have a memorandum on a law, and an executive order can come back and repeal or replace that memorandum or modify it. So the executive order is slightly more powerful in the fact that the executive order can impact the memorandum, but the memorandum itself, as long as there are no existing executive orders in that law, can make any impact that's needed to be made upon that law. The third type is proclamations. Proclamations are basically, these deal with activities of private individuals. So the other two are generally supposed to be for government entities or things directly impacting the government or the security of the nation. The proclamation deals with private individuals. Now, these do not have the force or effect of law unless the president is given the authority over private individuals by the Constitution or a federal statute. And these are basically statements. I have to say statements, but they're statements that are followed. And we'll see some examples of some right here. All right. With the last video, we went all the way down to January 22nd, and we covered all the executive orders up until that point, or all of the orders signed, period, until that point. So here we're going to focus on the ones from January 25th up until, like I said, up until 8 o'clock this morning. There may have been some more passed today, but I haven't seen those. So we'll talk about those later. The first one on January 25th is an executive order, and it repeals the ban on transgender people serving openly in the U.S. military. Okay. January 25th, another executive order tightens the Buy American rules in government procurement. Now, this is one of those that's also, when you start reading that executive order, it's hard to read. And it's one that I want to go through a little more because it makes me curious, tighten Buy American rules in government procurement. That sounds like, the government's only going to buy American, but I got a really bad feeling that that's not really the case with that executive order. And I'm going to get a little deeper into that one. The next one on January 25th was a proclamation, or a statement, basically, just verifying something that already existed or strengthening it. And this is where he reinstates the coronavirus travel restrictions on Brazil and most of Europe. January 26th, executive order. ends the Justice Department's use of private prisons. And we had talked a little bit about this, but, private prisons are big business, whether you agree with them or disagree with them. Personally, I've never been to prison, so I can't agree or disagree with them. I know that it may not seem like a good idea to privatize punishment, but it's happened. And, we do have a lot of private facilities, and a lot of research into this, would reveal a little more information. But the main thing that stood out to me about this one is the fact that it seemed to target illegal immigration more than anything else. And I mean to target it in a favorable way, to take illegal immigration basically, and I'd say do away with it, but 54% of the illegal immigration, illegals that are in the country that are committing crimes are housed, 54% of them are housed in private prisons. So if you close these prisons down, then these people are being released back into sanctuary cities, basically. January 26th, a memorandum. So this does not modify an executive order, but it is as powerful as one. Directs HUD to address discriminatory housing practices. Now, a lot of this stuff, it sounds good. We don't want anybody to be discriminated against. We want people to, have a good life, and people to be able to do what they want to do, and spend time with their families, and, just have a decent life. But when you start seeing things like this being passed, I'm just going to be honest. Let's talk about racism for a minute. Racism exists. There are some people out there who are racist, and that's just a fact. And it doesn't matter who the president is. It doesn't matter who is in charge. And it doesn't matter what executive order they sign, what memorandum they sign, what bill they put into place. Nothing's ever going to stop that until we fix things at home. January 26th, another memorandum also directs agencies to engage in consultations with tribal governments. January 27th, executive order to pause new oil and gas leasing on U.S. lands and waters. Elevate climate change as national security foreign policy priority. So this is a very big executive order. This executive order is going to impact not just people's jobs. Of course, the people that were, mining for this oil and natural gas on lands that were leased from the U.S. government, yes, they're going to lose their job, but as a nation, we're going to lose our supply of oil and natural gas. Think about how many people heat with natural gas. And if there comes a natural gas shortage, how many people that will affect in the wintertime in the colder states. This is going to be something that is going to hurt us, and we're going to feel it by this time next year. If this time next year rolls around, a lot of people are going to be hurting from this. January 27th, executive order. Reestablish President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. I'll be honest with you, have not read that one, so I can't go into detail on that. January 27th, a memorandum directs agencies to make decisions on best available science and evidence. And then when we see some of this stuff put out here, it seems like it's leading people in a certain direction. Because why would you have to tell agencies to make decisions on best available data that's out there? Why would you have to tell them that unless you want to dictate to them what types of data, what science they should follow and which science to ignore? And that's exactly what the executive orders, or memorandum in this case, does, is it enables them to lay out what type of science, what type of evidence, what type of data that the government feels is admittable or admissible, and what type we should throw out and ignore. So this, once again, is imposing more control over us and giving them more power. January 28th. A lot of people are going to be mad about this. Executive order. Reopen Obamacare marketplaces, lower recent barriers to joining Medicaid. All right. I lost my insurance the first time Obamacare come around. And I know a lot of people out there did too. And they kept talking about affordable health insurance. You're going to get affordable health insurance now. Well, I had it before Obamacare. I had it for like, $300 and something a month, and I had good health insurance. But after Obamacare, health insurance cost me $970 a month. And, it didn't help most people. Most people got hurt from this. The only people that did not get hurt from the original Obamacare were basically people who were making, a very low amount of money. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that's the people that didn't get hurt. Anybody that made enough money or worked for a company that at one point did provide medical insurance, you're going to pay a lot. This is a worldwide effect here, or, situation. And what this one is talking about, what this memorandum is talking about, is it's not just looking at, abortion here in the US, but we were funding several countries over the last decades, billions of dollars a year were going to multiple third world countries to pay for abortions. The US government was taking our tax money, billions of dollars, and sending it to third world countries to pay for abortions. That was done away with. But on January 28th, it was brought right back. Well, it doesn't even matter how you feel about abortions. Why should my tax money pay for an abortion in another country? I don't agree with them, but that's just my personal belief. But even if I did agree with them, why should my tax money pay for something in another country? Not even getting into the higher debate on that. Just saying that simple fact. Why do we pay for this type of, I don't even want to call it healthcare, this type of service, if you will, in a foreign country? February 1st, this is a proclamation, so basically nothing, keeps aluminum tariffs on the UAE, United Arab Emirates, scrapping Trump administration's exemption. February 2nd, executive order ends Remain in Mexico program, restores U.S. asylum system. This is another one of those that is so big and it ties into so many more laws. We could do a 10 video series on it and probably not even cover the whole executive order. But the thing is basically exactly like it sounds. It's exactly the way, you would expect it to be with this. The Remain in Mexico as people apply for asylum is done, or it's being done away with. So now when people apply for asylum, what this bill is trying to do, or this executive order is trying to do, is to take the people that are applying for asylum and go ahead and release them into, the population and assist them with government benefits and things like that, and then deal with the fact of whether or not they qualify for political asylum or whatever type of asylum. February 2nd, we're almost done with these, y'all. Start rollback of public charge rule, which imposes a wealth test on would-be immigrants. Review other recent barriers to legal immigration. All right, now this is something that it's sort of broad ranging. And a rollback of the public charge rule, this imposes a wealth test on would-be immigrants, which basically says, hold on, if you're a wealthy immigrant, why is it you're coming here for asylum, or, you can pay these taxes or this type of stuff? Why are you trying to sneak into the country? But it does away with that. And it's also removing other barriers to legal immigration. I'm all for anybody wanting to make a better life for themselves. I think everybody is. I think we all want a good life. And the better my neighbor's life ends and their neighbor, then probably the better mine's going to be. So we all want a good life, but there's a legal and illegal way to do things. If I do things the illegal way, they will lock me up. But yet people can come illegal to the country and get all the benefits that people living in this country don't even qualify for half the time. And this is the kind of thing I got a problem with. Executive order, and this is sort of an ironic one. February 2nd, executive order, create task force to reunite migrant families separated at the border. All right, do you know who began the separation at the border? 2 different facilities for children and for adults. Well, that was the Obama-Biden administration that started that. It wasn't Trump. It was Obama-Biden. And anybody that happens to be watching this that don't believe it, look it up. It really was them that started this. But let's be clear about what this really did. Okay, this was focused on because a lot of families would pay, what they call coyotes, people that bring people across the border illegally, would pay them to bring their children here because they knew that once their children were here, that their children would be taken care of and they would have a better life. And that happened a lot. So what this program initially began to do was to separate the coyotes from these children. When they caught, someone sneaking 5 or 6 children across, then they would separate that adult and they would put the children in a different facility. All right. So there's a lot of, hollering and screaming about that. But, let's get real. Do you really want these little children sleeping in the same jail cell as somebody who's just smuggled people across the country? There were reasons that they did that. Now, were some families separated? I'm sure there were a lot of them were. And that's terrible. I can't imagine it myself. And I know a lot of you, probably thinking the same thing I am. That would be terrible. But if I sneak across the border of a country with my kids, I sort of expect that they're going to separate us. And for anyone that doesn't think that, then just go try it. Just go try it. Go try to sneak across the Mexican border right now with your kids and see what they do. Because what we do is no different than that. What we do is a lot better. We actually give them money, pay them, put them in a house, and do all kinds of stuff. And that's pretty much Biden, sort of same thing. 43 actions so far, 28 executive orders, 4 substantive proclamations, plus 1 ceremonial, 10 presidential memoranda, and 2 letters rejoining the World Health Organization and the Paris Agreement, Paris climate change. That's right, Valerie. Obama built the cages. They did. And now everybody's looking at, well, Trump didn't do that. That was Obama. It's the guy that you voted in office this time, Biden. He's the one that was in on all that. Yeah, free housing and food for breaking the law. I mean, that's what bothers me the most about it is our government. I mean, our government's pretty strict, whether we want to admit it or not. Don't pay your taxes and see how quick the IRS garnishes your salary. Don't pay your rent, see how quick you're out on the street. We live in a pretty strict nation of where if we don't do what we're supposed to do, we're out on the street or we're in jail. But yet somebody could, come here illegally and benefit from the same, programs that we can't even qualify for. What would happen if I went to Mexico illegally? Well, I don't know exactly what happened, but I know that I was out in San Diego, California, when I was in the military, years and years back. And we were only allowed to cross the border at certain times. We couldn't go across that border, being in military, And we couldn't go across the border being in the military from, I think it was like 11 p.m. at night until 7 in the morning. What would happen? I mean, I don't know. I know that it's still legal to. And I know that, if you up here in where I'm in Michigan against the Canada border, if I try to sneak across it, I'm going to be detained. So, but I know one thing that won't happen. If I sneak into Mexico is they're not going to give me welfare, and they're not going to give me food stamps. They're not going to give me a house, and they're not going to tell me it's all right. I might be lucky to make it through the night. You in San Diego, Dan? Yeah, I was out there for about a year. I was out there at the RTC and then over at Coronado, if you know where Coronado is. All right. So the executive orders this week, I don't think were as shocking. Well, honestly, I don't think any of the executive orders we've seen from Biden were shocking. Because I think we expected them all. And actually, I expected more. I don't want to say relieved, but from what he was saying he was going to do the first 100 days in office, what he's done so far is just really scratching the surface of what he said he was going to do. And I think that's why a lot of his supporters are getting mad at him right now, is it because he's not going far enough to the left. And, he's far enough to the left, but it really blows my mind. And I think it blows a lot of people's minds how, we can look at how far divided, not really our nation, because the people that I talk to, the people that I work with, the people that I personally know, we get along. And not all the people I know are Republican or conservative. A lot of them are Democrats. A lot of them are very liberal, but that's them. And they got a right to live that way. And they look at me the same way. It's not the American people that are turning on each other. It's the government that's turning us against each other. The government's turning on us and making us think it's the other side and making the other side think it's us. When really we're all on the same side, except for the government. That's right. Riots don't go home at curfew. Yeah, it's this year it's going to be one of the history books. I mean, if we look back over the last couple of decades, I remember the Cold War. I was in the military during Desert Storm, Panamanian Civil War, Cold War, and it's everything's just different now. The whole world has a different feel. The United States has a different feel to it than it had back then. I remember how many of you remember when 9/11 happened? How many of you remember that day, what you were doing and what you did the next day? And, I remember it like yesterday because, that was the really first time we saw America get attacked. And that's not going to be the last time. What we're going to see coming up now is not necessarily America getting attacked from, some terrorist flying a plane into a building. We're going to see America being attacked by our own leaders, and they're going to call it their battle or their war on terrorism. And you just watch. Christianity is going to be next. It's going to be one of the religious beliefs, as they'll call it, that are extreme and that they're going to start focusing down. They're going to start focusing on, and they're going to start, clamping down on. Yeah, I was watching. I was at work when 9/11 happened. I remember that. And a guy come running in. He come out from the break area. He come running in. He said, "We're at war. We're at war." And he had just this really inflated story. He said, "There's a big air battle going on over New York right now. Jets are fighting." And I was like, "Oh my God." So I ran outside and started talking to other people and then see what really was going on. But I mean, it was a day that you never forget. But one of the things about that time, if you remember, also the next day, that night, the next day, America stood together. We stood together pretty much. I mean, we were unified at that point, to stand against something that was attempting to attack us. And if only we could be that unified again, because we are being attacked right now. We're being attacked on all sides, where our free speech is being attacked. Our gun rights are being attacked. Our political rights are being attacked. And pretty soon, our right to own properties, our right to even work is going to be attacked. And we're seeing a lot of bad things coming this way this year. The economic collapse, we're already in the middle of it. It just doesn't look like it because they keep bragging about how high the stock market is. But look what happened just the other day. I mean, you had some guys from Reddit, and that caused the stock market to shut down because some billionaires lost some money, and these guys made some money. So what kind of laws do you think will be put into effect to prevent the average citizen from doing that kind of thing again, from mass investing, basically? What kind of laws are they going to put in place to prevent us from getting together and creating our own little fund and buying a lot of stocks? They're going to do something to protect those big companies, because the big companies are the only ones that ever make it through. How many people have you known throughout your family, throughout your lifetime, throughout your family's family, your family's friends that have lost their businesses? All right. Now think about how many big name businesses you see go out of business. Is IBM out of business? No, they ain't. Is Microsoft out of business? No, they ain't. No, these multi-billion dollar businesses, they don't go anywhere because they profit when we fail. Not because we fail of something we do, but we fail for the restrictions that are placed upon us, for the conditions that are placed upon us by our government that is attempting to control every single aspect of our lives. They already monitor everything. And now our military is on a pause for 60 days so they can reevaluate the domestic terror threat. Well, guess what? There was something called Jade Helm about 10 years ago to where they trained to take out local militants. That was the entire purpose of the Jade Helm exercise. Now, a lot of the people that were in that exercise are not in the military anymore, But that was not the purpose of that exercise. They didn't do Jade Helm to train those people. They did Jade Helm so they could develop a set of curriculum, so they could develop guidelines, so they could see what worked and what didn't work, and then put it into place later with other people. Because once you have a procedure or process in place for something like this, you can bring in new recruits and they'll get the job done because they're just manning a watch station, basically. So this is, yeah, so I don't know, man. It seems like 10 years ago. It seems like yesterday, but then it seems like 10 years ago too. So it may not have been quite that long. There's a new bill, a new gun bill that's in front of the New York Senate or New York government right now that's going to require everybody to undergo a mental health check before they can purchase a firearm. If they already own a firearm, they're going to have to undergo a mental health check to be able to keep that firearm. And if they refuse to undergo the mental health check, then they're going to be charged with a Class D felony, and a Class D felony prevents you from ever owning a firearm. You see where this is going? We see where this is going. I mean, I don't think, we even really got to speculate anymore. They're pretty much telling us they're taking our guns. They're taking our freedom of speech. They're taking our rights. And with the way the economy's going, they're taking our money, and they're just going to give us a little bit back every now and again, call it a stimulus. That's what they're going to do. Give us a stimulus, but take the rest of our money by not letting us go out and be what we are, entrepreneurs, people who work hard, make a living, and try to make money for their families. 2015, Yankee Watchdog. Okay. Well, all right, everybody. We've been going for a little over an hour. Going to do another live stream this weekend. Also got some more videos coming out. Like I was saying, check out, I've teamed up with Noble Metals. They gave me a call and want me to do some commercials for them. And y'all know I like doing them commercials. So I'm going to do some commercials for them. But it's also going to have a discount code for those that are interested in buying precious metals. Not trying to push it on you, just saying that, it'll be there if you want it. But check it out, check it out. So what's the next step for us as civilians, prep trucking? That's the $1 million question. It really is, because we can all sit here and say, I got a year of food. I got more than that. I got a lot of food. I got a lot of water. I got a lot of ammunition. I got a lot of guns. I got a hospital with first aid equipment. I got all the gear I'd never ever need to survive in any environment for extended periods of time. But what do I do next? And that's the real question, is what do we do? We're watching on TV every day these people who may or may not have been duly elected taking away what we fought and worked so hard to ensure that we have. And they're taking it away from us, and they're telling us about it. So, what can we do? And maybe that'll be the topic of the next live stream. All right, everybody. Well, hey, thanks a lot for tuning in. I really, appreciate everybody listening tonight. I hope something, hope I was able to say something to help somebody somewhere. It's something like that. But I just want y'all to know that I appreciate it. And God bless everybody out there. And for now, Serious Survivor out.